Welcome back. Ukraine recently reported an attack on its power grid by Russian hacking group Sandworm that the country managed to thwart. The malware attack, just one of many that Ukraine has been fighting against since Russia invaded in February. Now the country is joining NATO's annual multi-day cyber defense games for the first time. NATO's Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence organizes the Locked Shields exercise in Estonia every year. The event includes fictional cyber attack exercises which allow cybersecurity experts from ally nations to test their cyber defense skills against each other and any other possible threats. Brad?
Staying in the cybersecurity landscape, as the world raises its defense measures against Russian cyber threats, cloud computing company Appian is calling for software sales to Russia to be permanently banned. The CEO of Appian, Matt Calkins, joins us now to discuss. Matt, great to have you here with us this afternoon. We've already seen temporary suspensions of sales to Russia initiated. You're now calling for a permanent ban. So what have your discussions been like with other executives in the industry who are raising similar commitments?
That's exactly right, Brad. It's a pleasure to be here. Appian is a public software company that has chosen never to do business with Putin's Russia. And we are asking now that other technology companies, other public tech firms make the same commitment and permanently stop doing business inside Russia. Right now, there's a lot of great gestures being made, and they're a start. All right, I've heard Apple and PayPal, and 2 weeks ago was Intel. Many companies have made a gesture that they're going to freeze or suspend doing business in Russia for the time being. They haven't announced when that might change. I believe they should go a step further. I think that's a good step, but they should go further. They should say they will never do business in Russia while Putin is in charge there.
And Matt, since the beginning of Russia's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine, the sanctions also enacted from countries around thereafter, there has been a noticeable net change. But I question to you what that net change has been in the number of threats, cyber threats to any Appian systems, even from what you've been able to see.
I'm sure that there's going to be a backlash against some of this, but I think it's important for us to do good. People want businesses these days to do good, and this is a thing that business can do. Are we going to sell the world's best technology to a regime that is repressing and causing damage? I don't think we should. I think that those who want business to do good should start here. This is an obvious case of good and evil, and businesses should stop working with Russia if they want to make a statement. Hey, speaking of which, the sanctions are also important. With my friends at RDI, I recently created a website called fightforukraine.com, 4 with the digit 4. We invented that the first week of the conflict in response to the sanctions that were being announced by Western governments. We felt that the sanctions sounded better than they were, and we wanted to keep these countries honest. So we created the fightforukraine.com scorecard that grades every country according to the efficacy of its response to the invasion of Ukraine. How much do the sanctions really bite? How much have the weapon shipments or the financial help really helped? I think it's important that we align the appearance of good with the actuality of good. And that's what I'm advocating for when I talk about companies permanently stopping doing business with Putin's Russia. And that's also what we're trying to get at with fightforukraine.com, where we figure out what sanctions are really making a difference and we reward those versus the ones that are not.
I think this is significant in the measures and the steps that you've decided to take as a company. And we'll see what other companies also make for and move for some of the permanent bans of sales of their products or services into Russia. But notably, that also requires a disclosure, or at least reporting out to investors at the same time, given the fiduciary duty that executives like yourselves have to those investors. How has this changed the landscape of reporting in instances like this to investors where you know you have to uphold that fiduciary duty?
For many technology companies, this is not such a large sacrifice. Russia is not one of the world's 10 largest economies and is not generally a large consumer of software. They buy some, don't get me wrong, but they're not a major consumer. And therefore, this is a decision that shouldn't be too painful for software companies to make. Yes, it'll have to be disclosed. I don't think, however, it'll be all that material. You can see they're willing to make it in the short term. In that case, why not make it in the long term?
What kind of precedent does that set for other instances, kind of moving away from Russia for a hot second, when we think about oil and gas companies that say that they're taking XYZ steps because of an imminent global threat, and a company, of course, the oil and gas company in that instant, perhaps trying to avoid the impact that their business contributes to at that point in time in the future. And so when we think about that, how does this set precedent in this global conflict incident to other imminent threats in the future?
Well, this sets a precedent for more activist businesses, for sure. And there's been talk about that for a couple of years. I do want to caution against assuming that oil and gas businesses are villains. Some of them are actually using technology to be far more efficient than they would have been otherwise. The world needs energy. It's not necessarily bad for them to be providing energy. They may be finding a more green way to do it. They may be really trying. So we shouldn't generalize about that. However, I do believe that all companies have an obligation to create a world that they want to live in. And so we should all be thinking about the implications of the sales that we make. And one of the most obvious things is to not sell to a villain.
Certainly. When you think about some of the other industry counterparts that you've been able to engage with, what steps even hereafter, as you think more broadly around globalization, are you leaning into or are you moving away from? And where are you ensuring that you still have some of those international partners more globally moving forward from here?
Yeah, actually, I think this is something that partners want to rally around. They want to be part of a movement that's doing good. And then we want, as controllers or owners or members of a business, we want to feel like there's more to our job than just moving some money around, collecting a paycheck. We want to have an impact. And we see what's going on, this invasion of Ukraine. We know it's wrong. We see the aggression, and we want to be sure that we're not supporting that. As Google says, right, the first rule should be don't be evil. Don't be part of something that's obviously wrong.
And then, Matt, just lastly, while we have you here, going forward for Appian, when you think about the cloud computing space, we've been tracking companies in this sector for the past several weeks and months as it's been a tough quarter for the sector. Where do you anticipate for a sector that's been able to benefit from more people tapping into and companies tapping into your solutions that you're going to be able to find footing, not just in the stock and the share, but additionally on retention and continuing to add on to the client base?
Yeah, it's not just cloud that we're about. We're specifically a low-code company, which means we're allowing people to create new software applications by drawing flowcharts instead of writing code. So it's a very empowering software. It's allowing people to be more powerful as developers themselves and allowing organizations to be more powerful in defining their own habits and being better services for their customers. So that's a product that there's going to be continuous demand for in any kind of a condition. It's just elevating people and companies. And so I believe that outside of the broader cloud sector, that's a business for which there will be sustained interest into the future.
Matt, we certainly appreciate the time here this afternoon and even the commitments as well that Appian has put forward. That's Matt Calkins, CEO of Appian, joining us this afternoon. Thanks.